go live on a couple other platforms here. Getting it. Here we go. All right. Live on Instagram. And it looks like TikTok is not going to let me go live today. So we will just cancel that out. Go live. Let's see if they'll let us do it here. Chat interview. Nah. All right. TikTok's not cooperating, everybody, so we're just going to go live without it here. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. This is our Friday live show. Runs every week at 7 p.m. Central. I'm John Lawyer. I'm a former soldier turned spiritual seeker, sometimes a teacher. Just trying to figure things out, see how the universe is all put together. And I feel like we can go out there and talk to different people, get different perspectives, find out what everything's all about. And this week, we have a different co-host every week. This week's going to be Randy Adkins. He's a minister, consultant, author, has a wonderful book out there, and I'm going to pass it over to him to give an introduction, and we're going to get started. Randy, thanks for coming.
Hey, John, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be able to come on and just have a conversation. I hail from here in South Carolina. That's called the Low Country. I've been in Charleston, South Carolina, my entire life, and part of that journey means that we have really good food here, and traveled all over the world. I think we're at like 23, 24 countries, so still figuring that out and enjoying that. I'm an author, teacher, speaker, preacher. I'm a lifelong learner. I enjoy being able to understand life and how can we really live life with joy, peace, love, happiness, uh, regardless of what may be going on external to us. So many times we might wake up in the morning, it might not look good with the weather, but that weather shouldn't change who you are. And the idea is the goal is for us to find out who we really are. And then from there, if we are able to do that, then we can have really something on the inside of us that begins to drive all of our thinking, our action, our behaviors, the way we live life, how we connect with others, and the relationships that we end up having. Throughout my journey, I have met my wife, and we've been married for 26 years. We met in college. I have three beautiful children. We're on the brink of what we call bird launching, and most people call it empty nesting, but we take a positive spin to it.
Right.
And so our last child is a senior in high school, and so we're enjoying this time. It's been great, and so we've learned a lot through life. And I love sharing information. So I've written a book, Produce on Purpose: Experience Life Being the Real You, and have a podcast, Produce on Purpose, where we also share the same types of tenets and information. So I'm just here to be able to share some great information about life and maybe ways we can practically put that into place and use that in all that we do.
Thank you so much for that great introduction. Living life with joy. I think, that really resonates when you say that. And having practical ways that we can go out there and move towards something that gives us joy, move towards something that fits with that resonates with us, that fits into who we're meant to be. That's a beautiful thing. I ask everyone this question, and I always love to get the answer. When spirituality is very different to different people. What's spirituality to you?
So, spirituality to me is understanding exactly who you are and understanding, for me, I believe in a creator. And my creator, I believe in, is called God. I know others may call their creator universe, nature, whatever they may call it. But mine is God, in that He's a creator of who I am. I have a distinct purpose, and I usually describe it in two ways: that you have a general purpose, which is to please your creator. And so, if my creator is God, in whom the Bible says is love, then every expression that I do, that I speak, that I move in, that I interact with others in, will be in that expression of love. And then that would be pleasing to the creator who designed me and manufactured me and made me who I am. And I often talk about this in this way. If I go in my kitchen right now, I have a dishwasher. That dishwasher it was built, it was manufactured to do a specific thing. But if I take and I put a ham in my dishwasher, it's pretty off-putting because I don't know what I would do. The dishwasher's like, "What am I going to do with that? I can't bake it for you, and it's not really good for me to do that. So I really should put dishes in the dishwasher because it was built to wash dishes." And sometimes what happens with us is we may not understand our purpose and who we are, and really what the connection to our source or creator is. And when we don't, we often find ourselves in this world doing things that may not align with what we were manufactured to do. And so, of course, if I wanted to have a ham, I should probably put it in the oven. And so we all have these different purposes that are there. So then I talk about gifting, because gifting is the second purpose. Is very specific. It's your specific purpose. And we all have that. We all have at least one gift. And it's that thing that you easily do, that everyone says, "Gosh, you do that so easily." And you're like, "It's no big deal." But it's hard for someone else to do that same thing because it's your gifting to do. And I often laugh about that because sometimes, there are some people that have the ability to see a need in somebody else, where, that may not be the first thing I see when I saw the person. I saw something else and they're like, "Oh, I see this." And you're like, "Well, that must be your gifting because I didn't see it." So we can have this base foundation, a connection to what I call in my book. I call it connecting the source. It's the first chapter, and in that means you connect with innately who you were born to be. And then as we begin to authentically understand who we are and what our manufacturer put us together for and the design we have, then we can kind of be able to do what we need to do, and a lot less effort.
Yeah. Yeah, when you connect with your purpose, when you're in tune with your purpose, everything just flows, right? It's just for me, anytime I talk with anybody that's like on this spiritual path, like this journey that we're all on, whether we know it or not, but people who are cognizant of this journey, it seems to me that they have some sense of what their purpose is in life and in align with the divine, whatever people may call their own divine.
Yeah, and that alignment, it's. I love how you brought that out. Is that the alignment that we end up having? I often talk about, in Scripture it tells us that we're a tripart being. Some people take it to a four parts, but if you think of us having a spirit, having a soul, and having a body, we operate in this world with the body, and we have our five senses, and that's how we relate to everyone. That's how we relate to this world. That's how we relate to all the objects in this world. If you are doing well with that and you're working healthily in that, and you're building that and making that strong, but your soul, whereas your mind, your will, your emotions kind of rely, and your feelings, you have that. If that's not doing well, your body could be fit, but you could be really sick. And additionally, the last piece is your spirit. If your spirit and you're not connecting really well with your purpose and connecting with what you were born to be, and that innate nature of who you are, if you don't have an alignment there working, then you end up in a place where you're just not fully who you are, or having that fulfilling joy that you should really have every day that you wake up.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I've been experiencing this on the kind of a micro level lately. On a macro level, I'm living my purpose. I'm moving towards the direction I want to move. But like lately, I've been on traveling some, and I've had stuff that I've had to do that had, moving stuff and getting ready to move out of my house, and it's taken me out of my purpose. I haven't been able to read like I want to read. I haven't been able to. I missed a couple of my live shows. Things happen, and I find that when you get out of that alignment, you start to maybe miss a little bit of your purpose, and then that kind of can kind of like compound itself and pull you back kind of into that kind of drone of society, that just like typical, oh, I'm just going through my day, but I'm not conscious about it. I'm not aware of it. I'm just kind of like, uh, it's like almost like you're being pulled through it unconsciously, and it's not a great feeling for me.
It's interesting to think about as a place where we talk about intention. You know, the idea that you are going to intentionally every day move towards a particular goal or a particular purpose of your life. And in order to do intentionality, you do have to allow for, different changes. It's not in just what we do, but it's in who we are, because, we will have seasons of transitions and changes in our lives. So things happen to where we move about this world differently. I can think back and go back to a time when our children were much smaller. So our life was very different. And there was, always scheduling. There was always a birthday party, or we were always doing something in that realm. So we were different then, but you could still be moving in your purpose. The question becomes, I think, is whether or not you're doing it intentionally, or if you've kind of rolled into this automatic place.
Sure.
And it happens to all of us. And I think we all can kind of roll back or pull ourselves back and say, you know what? I'm today, and I always tell people, just think of it as your next step right now. If you want to think of this 24 hours, do the best you can in this 24 hours. Don't worry about the big long goals, because actually tomorrow's not promised. The present is the only thing that we have.
True.
And just keep trying to pull yourself back when it's like, oh, you know what? I was just driving home and I ended up on automatic. I don't know how I got from the office all the way back home. I don't know. I was on automatic. And when we change and more intentionally say, I'm not going to be on automatic all the time. I'm going to intentionally try to be in this moment, intentionally try to do it. And in order to do that, it does take practice. It takes more practice and discipline to consistently bring ourselves back into that space.
How do you get people to start that process of forming that habit? How do you advise people when they say, how, man, Randy, how do I do this?
So my encouragement is always start small. I talk about, the small things do become big things after a while. One of my examples in the book that I share is when I was in fourth grade. We were supposed to be watching history, which we did end up watching history. The Challenger was there,
Yeah.
and they had all these great astronauts. And we were in school at the time watching the television, and we watched that shuttle go up and not make it. And it was only because of something as tiny as it was an O-ring,
Yeah.
small. And it's that small thing caused a very huge problem. But in the same way that that small thing can happen, we can string together a lot of small good things in our lives that can lead to bigger things in our lives and what we do. So I always say start off with, I do morning stuff, but you may be an evening person or you may be a lunch person, whatever your timing is to start with number one, being intentional about whether it's going to be saying, all right, today I'm going to be focused on making sure that I'm going to be in the present moment. And anytime I see myself or feel myself not doing that, I'm going to take a few seconds and I'm going to take some deep breaths. And I'm going to focus on those breaths. And every time you do that, you can focus on those breaths and it brings you back into the moment.
Yeah.
And that's just one of the tools and techniques that you say, I'm gonna intentionally do that every single day. And in the mornings, I would encourage, maybe the first time you try to say, you know what, I'm going to take some time and I just want to be in the present moment. Maybe you meditate for 1 minute to just say, I'm just going to sit here. And when I say meditate, I don't want to get confused like with, I got to think of nothingness and all this other. No, I'm just going to try to be in the present moment and understand that I can feel everything that's happening right now. I've got these hot lights on me right now. I can feel I can feel exactly, what's going on. I can hear what's happening. So feel all the senses, feel your body. And sometimes I also say, do a body scan. Say, all right, where are my feet? What's going on with my feet? What's going on all the way up my leg? And do those kinds of things to get you in the present moment and try to do it throughout the day for just a few seconds. And then what you want to do is increase that over time. And like I said, the small things then become bigger things. And then you can kind of build on top of that because I think sometimes we all say, we don't have enough time, or how do I just get started? Just start and don't get upset like you're going to have some magical moment. It's the small things over time, and before you know it, you started very small and you're way over here because you've been doing this for a long time, and it has begun to reset who you really are, and it becomes a habit after a while. Once you start intentionally doing that, you're going to intentionally know what's going on and what's happening at any moment.
Yeah, that's great advice. Start small, keep doing it, and it does build into a habit. It makes you feel better, and it tends to compound. You build compound interest on those small things that you do. They start showing up in other parts of your life. When I found when you practice being in the moment and meditation or prayer, whatever we want to call it, whatever people call it from different parts of the world, but it really starts to manifest itself in other parts of your day. You start to then become more aware of the things around you when you're not meditating. I even like I eat slower on like times where I'm doing more mindfulness meditation. Like I eat slower, I taste things more fully, I hear things better, I pay attention to people uh, more fully. I'm more fully connected with the person that I'm talking to when I'm talking to them instead of like letting my mind like wander as we sometimes let it when we're with people.
Yeah, and that wandering mind, part of what I've heard is that if you are learning to be able to pull that mind back and just say, "Hey, I'm back," because it's very difficult. It's happened to all of us. Is like you're sitting there talking to somebody, and they are talking, and you're like, "Wait a minute, did I just miss what they just said?
Yeah.
I need to pay attention again." And that's that waking up moment of you being aware that you're supposed to. So what you want to do is do that more often and say, okay, I want to just be in that moment as much as I can. And at any time you find yourself kind of wandering, just pull it back. And what I like is if you can really see yourself as understanding you are not this body, that it's almost like we're here in a bodysuit. That's what I call it. And you are observing even your thoughts. So the thoughts are not you. I know that there are a lot of sayings that say, you are your thoughts. Well, where do your thoughts come from? And can you observe those? Can you observe what's happening? And remember, you have a choice whether or not you entertain any of those thoughts that are coming or passing by at any
Yeah.
time. And if you are in that space of the observer, then you put yourself in a different space, and a lot of the fears that we have, a lot of the things of this world that we feel we have no we worry about sometimes, that we feel that are affecting us, or we're allowing them to provide reactions to us. They will learn. You will soon say, oh, does it really matter as much as I thought it did?
Yeah.
And over time, a lot of those things, they don't matter. The more important things that matter, you'll learn, and you'll be like, oh, it's all about these relationships that I have anyways. And why was I getting upset over all of this stuff in my life anyways?
Yeah. I really like to read the works from the Christian mystics because they're so, that thought of who am I, leading. I'm not my possessions. I'm not my body. I'm not these things that you're talking about, right? And then we understand that there's this connection to the divine that we have, and uh, it really it really takes me into interesting places. And you start to see things. Personally, I've seen things that I never would have seen, and I've seen
Hmm.
things from a perspective that I never would have had. And that perspective, I mean, it's probably my own perspective, but it's my own perspective coming from somewhere deep within myself that's connected to that divine thing.
Yeah. And I've talked about it in my podcast before. I have one of the episodes that says, I fired my ego. And here's
That's good.
why. Because our ego can sometimes be like that. I remember being a young child going into the store with my mom, and I wanted candy. And my mom says no, or, for whatever reason, whether she didn't have enough money or whatever it was, she said no. And I tried my best to throw a temper tantrum. Of course, I got in trouble for it, but the ego often does that to us.
Yeah.
Is that when it doesn't get its way, it's going to throw a temper tantrum. Now, what's the best way to take care of the ego? Is it to yell back at it or try to force it to do? And the answer is the more you force it, the louder it gets. Because
Yeah.
if you've ever seen this kind of play out in a store, you're telling the child to stop and they just start crying even louder, and it's like, you just wait till you get home. It's like, wait till you get home. So if we can learn that our ego has really, in most cases, have been trying to separate us and trying to make us into a space where we don't really understand that we are part of the divine and that we're really united. And so you get to see everybody in a different way. You get to understand the relationships that you have in a different way. You don't sit there and focus on a lot of the things that make us so different. Like, yes, we are unique, and I'm blessed that everyone is unique in what they do. Great, but that shouldn't make me upset or angry. I should love that. That's awesome. That means that we're all connected to the same thing. We all were created to be here, and we're doing what we need to do. And so when we are doing that and we're consistently doing that, we get to tell our ego, you've been in control for so long. I'm going to fire you, and I'm going to start to be in more of awareness of, hey, look, a lot of the stuff that I had to deal with, a lot of the patterns, a lot of the trauma, a lot of the things that I had been doing kind of automatically, I can now begin to be aware of and say, I'm not going to fall into those anymore. I want to make a change in my life. I want my life to be different. I want to have relationships that are different. And a lot of times, what happens in life is we've been blaming other people or blaming our environment, blaming things outside of us. And it's not the stuff outside of you, because every single thing that happens to us from the external, you are filtering it through you. And whatever you are, whether it's traumas, programs, whatever you want to call them in your life, that's what's causing you to either react in a particular manner or understand or be aware of, oh, I don't have to react like that every time I come into the situation. I didn't know that. And when that happens, that's like an aha moment for all of us.
Yeah, amen to that. It's really when we are these reactionary people, these unaware reactionary people, and when we stop reacting to things, then it's this whole level of control that's not a bad kind of control. It's the best kind of control. It's the kind of control that leads you to then you're aware of things. You're seeing things in a way that you probably have never seen it before. And our ego's so loud, it's so present, but at the same time, it doesn't take that distance between our ego being really loud and disruptive to the ego just kind of sitting over in the corner and being quiet. Is the distance is not that great. It can be tough to get there, and it can be tough to cross that narrow gap, but it's not as far as people think it is. Like being able to stop that anger, stop the rage, stop the sadness, stop uh, whatever it is that is getting in their way, And like you said, most often that thing is themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And being able to really be intentional and say, I'm going to work on this. So the way you work on the ego is you allow the things to play out. And a lot of times people are fighting, and I've been in this space in my life where I was fighting against, being to never be in pain, to never have something fearful happen to me. But if we continue to be that way, you are always playing defense. You are always actively thinking about all of these different things that could be going on. When, if you begin to say, you know what, I'm going to look at this situation here and I'm going to feel the feeling. I don't like it. It's making me feel uncomfortable. I'm maybe uncertain about a situation, but I'm going to allow it to go. And it is proven that most of the time, it might take you up to a few minutes, maybe up to 7, but just feel it all and let it be what it is. Don't react, just let it be. And after a while, it dissipates. And the more we do that, the greater you're going to be in a space in your life where you can say, that was the actual feeling, not the thoughts behind it or the patterns. You can work on those next, of saying, I've been attaching a way of reacting to this particular thing. Me as a male, a lot of times what we would do is attach anger to situations that make us feel uncomfortable, make us put us in a position where we feel like we don't know the answer. So we are now mad because that's how it showed up in someone else. Maybe it showed us the way that was in our lives. But maybe you could be uncertain or uncomfortable and know that you're uncertain or uncomfortable, and it just passes. And when you find out that, and the ego's voice does get smaller and smaller, and before you know it, you are now the as the observer, understanding and can see when these things are coming up. You can feel the feeling. It's never that you won't feel the feelings, and some people believe that, I can suppress it. The more you suppress it, it's going to come up somewhere. So if you put pressure on something long enough, it's going to explode. And that's what happens to a lot of people. They're like, I'm good, I'm good. But no, you need to work through it and work through that process so that you can get to a level. And this is where I get excited, because for me, this just happened a few years ago, of getting to a place of peace. I'm not worried about the outcomes in my life, because I do know that the outcomes will follow how I continue to have an intention in life. So if I intend to have joy every day, I intend that every single situation, every single relationship that I'm in, I'm going to have love, and I'm not going to engage in anything that is not going to be positive for me. I'm going to go for the thing that gives me peace. And if I continue to have that peace every single day, it guides me and it strengthens me and it allows me to have more of that alignment, and I can continue to work and navigate through this world. And no one else can ever push your buttons again, because now you understand what's going on with yourself, and you know how to then begin to work on something if something's not working right. And this is a constant work. It never stops. We None of us ever arrive. I like our GPSs because our GPS says you have arrived, and I'm like, yeah, I haven't arrived quite yet, but that's cool. I've arrived at some destination, but I've not arrived at the destination.
Yeah, that's good advice. I've arrived at some destination, but not the destination. That ultimate destination is this ongoing process, I think. I like
Yeah,
that idea though of this deep acceptance where we have feelings, we have these things, these emotions, and these thoughts, and we let them sit for a second. We have some acceptance with them, we process with them, and then we can move on from them. Whereas we don't fight it and say, "Oh no, I can't feel this, I can't think this, I can't see this. I have to just push it away." Because, like you said, eventually it's gonna come back. It's a constant. It
yeah,
will it always comes back. So
yeah.
I'm interested on how you got started down the path that you're on. Like where how did you end up here? Like what started all this for you?
So I'll go back to I was always in church, and when I was around 11, that was when I got really curious about, oh, who's this God? Who's this Jesus that they were talking about in school, in church? And I was in a vacation Bible school, and they talked about, now that it's your thing to make a choice and understand it. And I want to understand that more. And I prayed for it. And I believe at the age of 11 that I had a moment in my own room where, I felt the divine hand of God touch me and say, I'm with you. This is part of who you are. Um, that I then knew that, hey, this is part of what my journey is, and I want to know about that. So, of course, 11 is young. So, as you go through teenage years, there's all kinds of thoughts and things that you do, and you try to figure stuff out. I would say when I got married, I know my wife and I we were like, we really want to do this right. We want to kind of know what is this all about. And we started that journey, and I started really then wanting to study the Bible and teach it and understand it in a greater way so that I could live a life. And also, you want to be kind of responsible. And we were young, we weren't that old when we got married, and so it was part of that journey. Another area where, and as the years went on, learn more about more about Christian religion and our faith there. But to me, the moment that really changed me was when my 19-year-old brother was in a fatal car accident. And it's almost been 20 years. It'll be 20 years next year. And I was grappling with, why did this happen? How did this happen? I watched my younger brother grow up. And, at some point in times, we slept in the same bed. And, I saw him from a little baby, maybe he'll walk through the door one day. Or how am I supposed to, what am I supposed to do with this? And about 6 months after his death, my mom, we were at a Christmas gathering, and my mom brought a letter that she had found on her computer. The letter was from my brother, and it was about me. I have the letter today. And he explained in the letter how proud he was of me and some of the things that he was proud of that I had been doing, and some of the things that we had been talking about. Well, I never knew that I was making an impact on him when I was having conversations with him. I always thought, hey, we're having a conversation, but he was really soaking this stuff in. And then from then on, I was like, you know what? Any message that I ever share with someone, anytime I talk to someone, anytime I smile with someone, anytime I share a moment with someone, it could be making an impact, even if I don't see it. And so that is really what began to change me. And I also, know in those moments you could either be pulled further away from the divine, or you could be pulled closer to God at the moment. And that's what happened with me. I was drawn closer, and I wanted to seek more and understand more and see where all commonality comes into play of who we really are. And so that's kind of my journey, my spiritual journey to where I am today, and why, there's no one that can tell me that I cannot share a message that may touch somebody in some way, some shape or form. I may not see it myself, but I'm going to keep being that messenger to share that information to them as much as I can. And as I'm learning this life, learning pieces of it, understanding more of how we are here and why I'm here, I continue to share that information.
Ah, it's a beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing it. I think that we never know whose lives we're touching. It's amazing. We never know what people are going through, and we never know what people are seeing that we're doing that we'll never know. Because a lot of people, that's a good message from you, because I think a lot of people, they're not going to get that letter, where they understood that a friend or a family member, or maybe someone that they worked with, not even that closely, was impacted by them in a way that was truly meaningful in that person's life. And I think that speaks to how we have to go out there with loving kindness in our heart, because if we don't, just like we can impact people in these positive ways that we don't know about, it's the same thing. We have the power to impact people negatively. And so when we go out with loving kindness, we are really changing the world, you know. I think it's this wonderful message, and I think it's worth repeating. I think we, you know, it's okay to say this thing, you know, week in, week out, because it's
Yeah.
such a powerful message.
And it never gets old. So for me, it's a part of why the existence is here is because I truly believe that we are here to experience life in the fullest. Our particulars, sometimes when I was growing up, I always felt like I needed to say, "Oh, was this situation bad or was this situation good?" I could never see the situation as being just the situation.
Right.
And when we are able to begin to see every moment as a moment, and I was taught, oh, you should find out what you learned out of this moment. Well, can I just can I just like embrace the moment without trying to say I need to learn something out of it?
Yeah.
Because, a lot of times I think we put so much on ourselves to just embrace it. We're not embracing every part of what's happening right now. And when we start to do that and say that these moments, whatever they are, I may not feel good. And you need to say, I did not like that. I did not like how that made me feel, and be honest about that. But did that really cause you to completely change the way you interact in the world? And the answer is you make that choice.
Yeah.
And when you understand that you can make the choice to say, okay, I did not like what happened or occurred here. However, what I'm going to continue to do is in this moment, I'm going to continue to have the joy. I'm going to continue to have peace. I'm going to choose things that are going to continue to be energy to me and not things that draw energy out of me. I can actually choose that every single day, regardless of what happens or the moment and how I feel in the moment. And when we get to that space, it changes your life. And it guess what it does also. And for those that are around and connected to you, it begins to change them because they don't understand how could it be that you have just seen you've went through the same thing I just went through, or you were in that moment but you are not reacting the same way. And they understand and they say, well, why did you not feel this way? I'm not tied to an outcome. I'm not tied to how the end is going to be. I'm just enjoying this journey and enjoying every moment. And I'm being intentional about every moment. And guess what? Most of the moments you will find that they're beautiful in their own way. And whatever they are, you allow them to be. Sometimes it's more reflective on some moments, but in some moments you can just be in that moment.
Yeah. I'm not tied to an outcome. It's a great way to say it that you just said. And it's about choosing to go out and live life instead of kind of letting life live you, you know.
Yeah.
There's definitely a huge difference in that. When as you know, I love I don't you know I've never had anybody on that's been from Low Country, and I'm only familiar with it. I actually lived in Augusta for a while, so I was too far away. But I'm interested in how because the Low Country is it's like such a unique part of our country's culture, and it's so small. It's almost like people talk about New Orleans, you know, but people don't talk about, and you know, and that and the Cajun influence there. But Low Country doesn't get as much airtime. I think it's getting better. But how did being from that area, which is truly unique, how did that change your path? Like, how did that impact your who you are today and your spirituality and all that?
I believe a big part of who we are. Of course, we're in the Bible Belt, and I was very connected to our church and what we are. So there were a lot of spiritual roots there. A lot of the people in the community that I had around me. I have a pretty large family. We're pretty much all here. And I believe that that kind of support system was a big part of it. Um, Additionally, being in the low country, we have the greatest food ever. So I've traveled the world and nothing compares. We'll go somewhere and everybody will be like, "This restaurant is the greatest," and we'll go there and we're like, "Yeah, it was good, but it's still not." So food becomes a big
Yeah,
thing for us, and like there are so many restaurants, and
yeah,
it also has a charming feel here of
yeah,
some of the history that's here, and a lot of my family are what you would come from the Gullah Geechee culture as well, and so understanding that and understanding those roots and being a part of this type of community provides a lot. And we now have a international African American museum here that they've got here. So the Low Country is beautiful in nature because it does have a lot of history and a lot of culture. And so for me, it has affected me in the way that I understand that I need support. I need spiritual support. I need the idea of some good food somewhere. So I can always come back to that. So that's what it's done for me.
I love it. Well, it's interesting you say about the food because like I first learned really about Low Country on Top Chef. They were in South Carolina, and then I watched Padma's Taste the Nation on Hulu, which is about various parts of our culture and the multicultural makeup of America. It's really great. But
Yeah,
she spent a whole hour there in Low Country. It was really eye opening, actually. It was um, uh, it was really powerful. So it's interesting that you talk about how powerful the food is because it definitely
yeah.
translates.
Yeah, we love it. We love the food, and especially seafood. I mean,
Yeah,
we're right on the water, and
sure.
so when I married my wife, she's from Spartanburg area, so or Spartanburg, Greenville, a little further north.
Right.
Augusta's like up there. So we would have these cookouts, and our cookouts consist of crabs and shrimp and all of this seafood. Where she's like, I've never been around that. I would always have hamburgers and hot dogs and maybe ribs, but not all of the seafood. But yeah, like yeah,
Right.
it's definitely pretty cool and informative when it comes to that kind of
Sure.
food that we have here.
Well, that goes into I think one thing I get from you is how authentic you are, and you talk about this in your book. You talk about it sometimes when you speak. Yeah, tell us about authenticity. Why that's so important.
Yeah, part of the writing produced on purpose, experience the life, being the real you is that we often find ourselves showing up with masks. And I've done this throughout the time. So
Same.
I play many roles in different places. And when I talk about mask, it could be emotional mask. It could be a mask where I just hold back what I'm going to say in a situation, or I'm acting in a way that I believe that my audience in that moment feels I should act.
Yeah.
And the idea is throughout the book, the reason the book has a mask on it and the mask is cracked and it has a really a seedling coming out of it is that as we find our unique self and who we really are, the goal is that we show up as who we are in all situations. And so if I'm in the corporate world where I do a lot of consulting, I need to show up as the same Randy as I show up in at home, or I show up in at church, or I show up in at the nonprofit organization I'm working with, or the community area that I'm, or in the grocery store. So how can I make sure that I begin to relieve myself of these masks? And I describe in the book of we're in this life, and you've been invited to this great masquerade party, and you put on the mask. It's beautiful. It's nice, but as things begin to happen along your journey, you begin to find out that, first of all, I can't authentically be who I am if I have a mask on, and the mask covers things. The
Yeah.
mask doesn't allow for us to be exactly who we are. And so, part of when you start to find out who you really are, then you can begin to express yourself in that way everywhere you go, and that becomes authentic and unique to how you show up. Now, I'm going to make sure everyone understands you don't show up to ever put anybody else down, hurt anybody else, so that you make you feel better. Because some people think that that's what they're saying. I'm being me at this moment. No, you're
Yeah.
going to intentionally be that loving person that you were designed to be,
Yeah.
and that takes work. And it's not just that you're going to dismiss everybody else in the room and not. No, when I show up, everybody's going to see this light, and they're going to actually probably be attracted to the light because I have a light to shine, and they're going to find and they're going to say, well, what's different? Something's different about you. And you don't have to announce it to anybody, you just get to live in it. And that provides a peace in your life, because one of the things I found with me is it caused anxiety to juggle all of the masks that I was juggling in my life. I was juggling being the dad over here. I was juggling being a board member over here. I was juggling being the consultant over here. I was juggling being the ordained minister over here. And I should have been pious in that particular situation. That should not ever be. You should see me who I am, and if I'm jokey at home, I can still be jokey at church, or jokey or whatever. Do whatever you need to be to still be you. And that will give you the greatest peace in your life. You won't have as much anxiety in your life. You won't have as much worry in your life, because then you know that I am expressing the greatest parts of who I was born to be. I'm sharing information with others that needs to be shared. For that's part of my goal and my mission, is to teach things in ways that make it digestible to people. And so that's why I love what I do.
Yeah. No, it's a great uh, metaphor to use to teach people how to be themselves. I love the mask that you have. I can see it over your shoulder as well, there in the background, and it's it's amazing too when it, when you tell people to be authentic, to be themselves, to take off the mask. Like you said, you caveated that with, which I think is appropriate. Doesn't mean you're just an asshole. You know, pardon my French. Like you still, you know, it doesn't give you a blank check to just not be nice. It's about being who you are, shining that light, and like you said, people will come to you, people will respond to it, and we're so afraid of that. We actually wear the mask because we want to attract people. We want to be accepted. We want to be part of the tribe, and yet oftentimes we don't realize it, putting all these different masks on and switching them out actually prevents us from being part of the tribe we were meant to be a part of, with being around the people that we were meant to be with, because um, that's kind of how, for me, the divine works. Like when you go put light out there, you attract light. When you go put out
Yes.
darkness out there, you attract darkness. And that's, people think it's New Age spirituality, but that's as Buddhist or Hindu or Christian as anything. Is that what you put out, you get back. Um,
Yeah.
that idea. So I think
It's the golden rule in the Bible. I mean,
it,
you treat others the
absolutely,
way you want to be treated.
absolutely. And uh, I did a YouTube episode several months ago, almost a year ago, and it was about the golden rule from like different societies, different cultures, different religions around the world and throughout time. Everybody has one, and
Hmm.
it's out there, and that's it. Uh, and whether you're Christian, even in Judaism, it's the most important thing in Christianity is really doing to others as you would have them doing to you, and it's the same thing in all these ancient texts. It's so interesting.
Yeah.
Um, when when you get if you so I'm always interested to ask support professionals, people that are ministers, people that are out there helping other people, consultants like yourself. How do you stay grounded? Because we have to, we're out there trying to keep other people grounded and help people. And how do you do it yourself? What brings you back to center?
So there are multiple answers to that question, and I'm going to share that, because I think that number one is you have to have a support system that you have. And I will go to, in the Bible, Jesus had 12 disciples, but there were three that he would take into his most intimate situations and in places. So there is a model there of probably how our lives should also be. So part of my life is I have a support system of only about three people that are extremely close that I can pretty much divulge anything to. And then, everyone else that goes out of that circle and the other concentric circles that I have, there's different relationships that I have with them in that particular way. So there's a support system there. I also encourage people to really think about if you need therapy about particular things in your life. So whether you need a professional therapist or you need someone else that is professional in counseling, pastors or whoever that you can talk to about you. And it's only about you. And, the group that I was talking about, the smaller group support system that you have, they have to be people that can listen to you in the middle of your talking about something and not judge you, not begin to try to give you advice. They're going to ask you more questions about maybe where you are and what's going on there, or and allow for you to continue to grow in where you are. So that's the other area. So you have the support system, you have the therapy type things that are pretty strong. So you don't need those all the time. That the therapy part, but you need it when you need it, and don't
Yeah.
be afraid of it. And then additionally, just practices and discipline. So some of my practices and disciplines have to do with physical health. I do go to the gym. I do that at least twice a week. And then I also make sure that I'm reading something, whether it's the Bible, spiritual pieces, and interpreting those things in my own way to as a habit to continue to grow and do things. I'm a part of Toastmasters because that's a part of me continuing to speak in a great way. So there are a lot of things that I have in place that I love to do. I don't do things just because I have to do them, but I get to do what I do
Yeah.
every day, and I get to choose that. So I have learned, and a lot of times I tell my younger children who are now getting into adult life, try all these different things because you're going to find out what you don't like, and then don't do those things, but do the things that you do. And if there's something that you need to have someone help with or be a part of because you don't like doing them, go ahead and get that help and allow them to do that. So that's part of how I continue to maintain and continue to do. And of course, take breaks, rest, travel. We just came back from Panama. You go places, and sometimes reset. Sometimes it's a week, sometimes 2 weeks, whatever the time frame is, so that you can remember who you are and not be embraced by all of the other things that may be going on in the home and in a familiar setting.
That's great advice. I would encourage people to like rewind that segment and go back and and watch it again because that will help anybody. I don't care who you are, what your life's all about, or what your beliefs are. I think that is a great segment there that people can really use to kind of move forward in a way that will help them live a better life.
Yeah.
Is there, I feel like we could probably talk about. There's a lot of stuff I wanted to talk about in my notes that I haven't gotten to, but that's okay. It happens a lot. Um, the less I get to, usually the better the conversation anyway. So, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you definitely want to get out there though, and you definitely want to tell people about?
The main thing I want to leave with everyone is that you have the ability to intentionally live this life from the inside out versus the outside in. What do I mean by that? I'm going to give you an analogy. I love thermometers. Thermometers do really well at telling us what the weather is outside. It will tell you what the degrees are. And sometimes we all get good at telling what all of the problems are in our life. And so we become really good thermometers. And oftentimes I have teams of people that are around me, and they're being a thermometer at the time. And I'm like, well, what's the solution? And so I'm encouraging you to be the thermostat, because the thermostat will begin to change the degrees. And so in your life, you can be the thermostat. You don't have to be the thermometer of what's happening to you, what the environment is, how I was raised. My parents did this to me. I don't have to do that anymore. I can now be the thermostat, and I'm going to set the temperature with my intention. And this is meaning that when I come into the room, the temperature is going to change for everyone that is in the room. It doesn't have to remain the same. So if I see negativity, I walk in with positivity, the temperature changes to positivity. And I encourage everyone to know that you have that power. You have the ability to make that choice every single day to live from the inside out. That's what the change begins to become. You no longer just see the problems, you now have the solution, and you are that solution in your life, because now you can produce based on your purpose, and then you will be able to experience life in a completely different way than you've ever experienced it before.
That's a great way to I think give people actionable advice by taking action, by being that thermostat. I love that. I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that one of these days. Thank you so much. You know, throughout this episode, we've had a ticker running that has a link to your website. Um, I definitely want to recommend everyone in the audience to check your book out. Um, Produce on Purpose. I think it's a great concept. It's a great theme. It's a great book. It's on Amazon. Your link's on your website. Um, what else do you want to people to know as far as like being able to reach out and contact you or get with you or anything else? Go ahead and let them know.
Yeah, you can go to my website, www.randyadkinsjr.com. There you will find links to my socials at the top of the website, as well as, if you, of course, as John has said, get the book. You can also listen to the podcast. I have videos on there, sermons, as well as information about connecting with me. So I love connection. So if you want to connect with me, you can connect with me on socials, or you can just contact me and say, hey, I like this concept, or I have a question about this. What do you think about this? I don't mind connecting in that way. I enjoy being able to share and pass that along. So I open that up to anybody who wants to. And John, thanks for having me on. This has been fantastic.
Yeah, it's been a great conversation. I'm gonna go ahead and shut the stream down, but just stick around. We'll say goodbye after. To everybody out there watching, thanks for hanging around. And we'll probably see you in a couple of weeks. We're gonna take a break. Got to go on vacation and see some people in Pennsylvania, and we'll be back to the show in a couple of weeks. So you guys all have a good night.